Welcome to Young Money with Tracy Bissett, the advice show for young millionaires in the making. It's time for some $1 Million Straight Talk with Tracy, President and Chief Financial Fitness Trainer at Bissett Financial Fitness. Each week, Tracy's going to tell you what you need to know now at the beginning of your earning curve. Basic and advanced financial concepts made clear, healthy money habits and the missteps to avoid, and all the stuff that you can do to set yourself up for a future of fantastic financial freedom. Ready to lace up and start this week's financial fitness training? Let's do it, Tracy.
Show today. I'm really pleased that we were able to secure this guest, Sandra D'Souza, founder and managing director of Sandstone Solutions Group. She's going to give you all the tips and insights that you need to be able to secure second, third, fourth roles, or even if you're trying to, in your own role, work with a search firm, how best to do it. And so we know that when you're in the job that meets with your skills and you're able to achieve your goals, you're going to make more money so you can be financially fit. So tune into this episode. I hope you love it, and there'll be a lot of takeaways from Sandra. So thank you. Welcome to the Young Money Podcast. I'm really excited. Today we have such a special guest, Sandra D'Souza. Welcome to the show, Sandra.
Thanks for having me, Tracy.
So Sandra is the founder and managing director of Sandstone Solutions Group, a search firm based in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. Sandstone's clients span across all sectors from large financial service organizations to small not-for-profit. Prior to launching Sandstone Solutions Group, Sandra spent the first 14 years of her career in progressively senior finance roles and has held controllership and VP finance roles in both large public organizations and smaller privately owned companies. Sandra also spent 8 years at a large global professional services firm as director of recruiting, supporting clients across a variety of industries. She holds an Honors Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Ottawa and obtained her CPA CA designation. So welcome again, Sandra.
Thanks, Tracy.
So I'd love it if you can start by sharing with the listeners what you do, the nature of your business, and really what a typical day looks like.
My company, as you mentioned, is called Sandstone Solutions Group, Inc. It's a boutique search firm. So I help companies build strong teams from mid-level management and up. I can also help them find interim or short-term or temporary resources to help them with specific project or backfill needs. I started out, as you mentioned, I am a designated accountant. So I started out doing primarily finance and accounting roles. But as my business evolved, I started working on searches in other disciplines. So HR, sales and marketing, and general management roles. I've had clients in different industries, as you mentioned, from financial services to not-for-profit and pretty much everything in between. So a typical day, I guess I spend a lot of my day out meeting people. So I'm actually, if I've got an active search going on, I'm meeting with the client to find out what their specific needs are for the role. I'm also meeting with potential candidates. So that's pretty much what I do. I spend my day talking to people.
It must be pretty fun as you get to know different people's stories, their backgrounds, and really just get to meet people who are out there looking for their next best role.
It is. And that's one of the reasons why I got into search in the first place, because as an accountant, you typically spend a lot of time in your office churning out financial statements and other reports that, some people care about, some people don't. So, so recruiting was kind of fun because it got me out, and I'm a talker. So, once I start, I could talk for days. So it's the perfect job for me.
Now, you've used the word search firm. You've talked about recruiting. I know some of the listeners may not be familiar with exactly the nature of your business. So maybe you can just break it down in terms of who you help and what you do for them.
So search means that I go out and search for candidates for companies. So the company is my client. So they reach out to me and tell me what they're looking for in terms of the level of the position, the title, and the type of person that they think would be a good fit. So then I go out into the market and try and find that person. So various ways of doing that through job postings, searching on LinkedIn and reaching out to people, and using my networks.
I think that really covers it off in terms of exactly who you're working for and what you do.
Yeah, like it's a pretty straightforward business. But a lot of people, as you said, aren't familiar with it. So it's always good to really clearly identify who you're working for. So I think one of the misconceptions that people have is that the candidate has to pay for this service and the candidate doesn't pay. Like it's the company that's doing the hiring that pays the recruiter.
Well, that's excellent to know. And I've certainly heard quite a few people with that misconception. So I'm really glad that you cleared that up. Now, I want to take you back a little bit into your life. So if you think about your background, you've had a highly successful career to date. Currently, you've launched your own business and it's doing really well. If you think about your success over the years, what would you say helped to lead you to your success? Or have there been some key success factors or themes that have kind of shown up repeatedly over the years that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I think, and I thought about this question. I think for me, I think it's always been being open to new opportunities. And most of the jobs I've had, I haven't had the specific experience for the role I went into, but it sounded interesting and I thought it was something I could do. So I took the chance on it. And I think that's really important, is just being open, because you don't really know where things are going to lead, and you don't know what opportunities will come, from each step you take. Right. So I think that's been a critical success factor. The other thing is really just being curious, making an effort to learn things I don't know, and just, I don't know, I guess wanting to grow and change and meet new people and have new experiences and all of that. So I think that's really good, because I think you can get stuck and your world can become very narrow if you let it. So I think it's really important to get out there and do different things.
Absolutely. And I love what you shared. And certainly none of these are novel, but it just reiterates as we do these interviews what these key success factors are. And so you've said being open to new opportunities, being curious, along with all of that goes with being a lifelong learner. And I'm sure it was scary at times and really pushed you out of your comfort zone, but you had that inner confidence to say, I'm going to try. Because what's the worst that can happen? And I'm just going to put myself out there and see where it takes me, so that, as you said, you don't get into a place where your world just becomes really narrow and you've got limited options.
Yeah, and I think, all of us need to do that. I mean, just doing this podcast is pushing me out of my comfort zone a little bit. So thanks for that, Tracy.
Oh, you're welcome. And as I said, these are certainly not novel, and we hear them from different people that we have on the show, but really important to just take those small steps and see where it's going to go. So it's great. Thanks for sharing your personal insights.
You're welcome.
So when you also look back in your life, has there ever been a big financial challenge or something that you wish you'd known a little bit earlier in your life when it comes to financial matters or personal finance?
I've always been a saver. I've always been very good with my money. I've always known the value of money. I think for me, it's, one of the lessons I learned earlier on, and this is just on the personal investing front, I trusted that the investment advisor, one of my early investment advisors, was always acting in my best interest. And I didn't ask enough questions, and I didn't, I guess, pay attention as much as I should have to things that were being done. Not that there was anything nefarious going on, but just for my own education, and I should have had more input into the approach that he was taking. So, just that kind of stuff, and things that you learn along the way, like just to speak up, ask questions, and not just let people make decisions for you based on what they think is the best option.
Yeah, and I would say that that's really critical. And certainly we do talk about that all the time on the show, because if you're not managing your money, you're leaving it to someone who may not have the same goals as you, may not have the same interests. They may be aligned for their own interests. Not that that was the case in your situation, but unfortunately with financial services, sometimes people use a lot of acronyms. They make it sound really complex, especially in the world of investing. They can make it very intimidating for those who feel like they may not know everything. And so asking those questions and really just taking ownership of your money, I think, is a great lesson and something everybody can do a little bit earlier in their lives. And it doesn't matter what age you are. There's no right age to start doing that. So thanks again for sharing that story.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm going to take you back to why you're here today. And certainly that's to talk about your expertise with recruitment and search firms. And so you've already clarified for us what is a recruiter, what is recruitment, and what a search firm does. Really clarified that the search firm is working on behalf of the company and that's who pays them. For those that are listening who are looking to land their first job or subsequent jobs, how does a recruiter or a search firm help them?
I think for those looking for their first job, a recruiter is probably not going to be able to help you, because for those jobs, typically, the recruiting is done on campus or through job postings, et cetera. Because it's, most companies wouldn't want to pay recruiter fees to recruit at that level. Where a recruiter becomes useful is once you've had some experience and you're looking for your second, maybe your third job, where you've got as I said, you've got some experience and now you're looking to maybe get a more senior position that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get at the company that you're with, or you might want to make a change of industry or something like that. So that's where a recruiter can be helpful. Now, keep in mind that, you're reaching out to the recruiter, but the recruiter may not always have the right job for you at that moment, so it's important to build those relationships, and stay in touch, because you never know when something will come up that could be a fit for you.
Absolutely. And so I know we've talked about it before, but also some of our listeners may be in a position where they're looking to hire those people who are in their second, third, fourth job. And so they may be thinking, how would I even get in touch with you to make use of your services to recruit on their behalf? So how does that generally work?
So generally, they could reach out to me, have a phone call, talk about what their need is. And then, we can talk about, well, depending on how experienced that individual is, size of organization, et cetera, we can talk about whether that is the right fit, whether that is the right role. One of the advantages I think I have from, maybe some of the other recruiters out there is I do have a lot of work experience. I've worked in different size organizations and in different types of organizations. So, I can help the client figure out whether the person they think they need is really the person they need, and go from there. And then, the process would be to help them develop the right job description, figure out who we're going after, where those people are, whether it's, where we post the job, or if they were looking for people coming out of a specific company, who I would reach out to, et cetera, et cetera. So that's typically how that process would work. And then once I identify candidates, I would phone screen them, see if they're interested, if there's a fit, and then do an in-person interview. And then I would pass on the top candidates to the client to meet with them and go through whatever their interview process is.
So you just mentioned the term call screen them. So what does that look like for someone who might get call screened?
So that's usually the first step in the process. So say for example, I've identified somebody on LinkedIn that I think could be a potential fit for an opportunity I'm working on. So I'll reach out to them if they're interested. We'll set up a time to talk, and then on that call, what I do is I give them a high level overview of the position, tell them who the client is, discuss some of the key details like title, salary, et cetera. And then if they're interested in, if they think it could be a good fit for them and they're interested in moving forward, then I'll schedule an in-person meeting with that candidate to have a more detailed conversation about their background and experience.
Okay. Well, that sounds pretty reasonable, and certainly something that people should be prepared for if they are in the market to switch companies or switch roles.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say there are certain industries or job levels that recruitment and search firms tend to cover, or is it pretty much any industry, any jobs other than kind of that entry-level job?
I would say any industry, any job. I mean, there's different recruiters that specialize in different areas, so it's across the board.
Okay, perfect. And so when you're thinking about those who are out there looking for jobs, are there any tips or tactics you can share to help them in that search that they're doing, whether on their own or they do start working with recruiters and search firms?
I think one of the things to keep in mind is that it's a small world, so you have to be in all your interactions, be as professional as possible. So if you are dealing with a recruiter, and if you're not interested in the job, that's great too. Just say so, and that'll end the conversation. But I think what's most frustrating for me is when people just don't show up or don't return calls or like that kind of stuff. And that works for me. That works for, in-house HR. Like, I think it's really important that people are always professional in their dealings with everyone, because, as I said, it's a small world, and you never know where you're going to run into that person again, or someone that knows that person. And it's important to maintain a good reputation out there.
Absolutely. And so my background's financial services. I teach at Centennial College in a financial services program. And oftentimes some of the students that I have are new to Canada, and they don't really appreciate that while Toronto may be the biggest financial market in Canada, it is relatively small, as you say. Generally, you can get to someone in an organization maybe one step away from you or two steps away from you. And so everybody's able to kind of check up on anybody who's looking for jobs relatively easy if they want to. Because there's not that many degrees of separation.
No, especially in financial services. Yeah, you're no more than two connections away from pretty much anybody, so it's really important to keep that in mind.
And so because of the people that you're usually searching for, I know that professional has a meaning for you. So you've just given some examples about verbal and written correspondence and maybe making sure those are all professional. What else comes with being a professional to you? Some things that maybe people might not know of that you take as a given.
I think, as I said before, just being polite, like common courtesy, returning phone calls or responding to reach outs. And like I said, not everyone's going to be interested in when I'm reaching out to them, but it never hurts to say, thanks, not interested, and end it that way. Or if something comes up, so say, for example, I've had this happen to me before where I've scheduled meetings with potential candidates and driven out to meet them, and they haven't shown up, and they don't bother texting or emailing or whatever. And that's really frustrating,
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to be aware that, like you have to be mindful of other people's time. And, stuff happens, and you may have changed your mind and you're no longer interested, or something else came through that, you ended up getting another job. That's great. Good for you. But a quick text or email would just make that whole situation so much better.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the 30 to 90 seconds it would take to do that is certainly worth way more than the damage to your reputation, because you're in a long-term career. You're going to be helping people and helping companies find the right people for a long time. So if that person comes on your radar again, you certainly have an image about them, which you would be bound to share with employers.
For sure. And I remember, and I'm sure everybody else does too, but you remember those people. You also remember the really good people, So, I've had a lot of candidates that I've worked with where things didn't work out. They didn't end up getting the job, but I had a really good experience dealing with them. And, the next time something comes up that I think they would be a good fit for, they're the first people I reach out to, So it goes both ways. Like, I think if you're not so great and you don't respond, or you're super responsive and just nice, just being a nice person, I think makes a big difference. And the other thing too, and I will probably getting there, but I think when you're actually going on an interview, I think it's really important to dress appropriately for the interview. Like for me, I usually tell people you don't necessarily need to dress up to see me. Like I don't expect you to put on a suit, but I expect you to make an effort, and not show up
just rolled out of bed in their pajamas.
Yeah, like, I don't want you to look like you're about to clean out your garage or something, right? Like it's just that, again, that common sense, like it's still a meeting, it's still a professional environment, so show up that way.
So dress appropriately, use your manners, and certainly I would suggest being prepared. So generally what kinds of questions you're going to be asked. So have some stories, have some examples ready. Does that make the interviews go better?
Absolutely. It's always better when people can tell a story or talk about a situation and be prepared. I think one of the things that I've seen most often, particularly with younger candidates, is there's two extremes. They either their answers are too short and they don't give enough information, or they're too long and they go on forever and ever. So I think it's, finding that that happy medium of being able to answer the question directly and give enough information. And then you can always ask the interviewer, like, is that enough? Or, do you need me to expand or whatever? And do it that way rather than just rambling on for 5 or 10 minutes when it's not necessary.
Getting back to your earlier point that everybody's time is important and you want to respect people's time. And during the time they have slotted for the interview, you want them to learn as much as they can about you and not just have it focus kind of on one aspect of your experience or your personality.
Yeah. And, the other thing is that I've seen people that come in with their sort of set talking points, so they've decided these are the things that I want to make sure I say. And they're not necessarily listening to the questions being asked. And, they're just trying to get their points in. And, that doesn't work either. I think you always have to try and really focus on the questions that are being asked, answer those. And then if there's anything you need to add at the end, you can always do that, like just to make sure you highlight some things that you think that, you bring to the table that would be relevant to the role, but do it at the appropriate time.
Absolutely. And in most interviews I've ever been in my life, usually at the end, they say, is there anything else you'd like to let us know, as well as any questions? And that's really your opening to kind of tie it together if there's a few things you think are relevant that you haven't had a chance to really lay out there.
Yeah, exactly. Like that would be the perfect time to do that.
Also with follow-up, it may be a little bit different when you're going through a recruiter, but I know one particular interview I had, I knew we would be a fit, but I didn't think that the interviewer was seeing how we were going to be exactly a fit. And so I regrouped, I sent an email and kind of linked the lingo they used with me in the interview to how I could help them solve those problems and how I was the right person. Because I just had that sense that they weren't getting me as much as I was getting them. And so that made the difference, that just taking those few minutes and going back to them. And I did get that role. Any other pieces of advice like that you might have for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, that can happen. And I think that's a good way of doing it, in your follow-up email. And I think it's important to send a thank you email. Now, sometimes clients don't like it. Like it depends. And I would always check, if you are working with a recruiter, check with the recruiter first if it's appropriate to send that email directly to the client, because some companies like that, some don't. Or actually some people like that, some don't. But yeah, I think that's a good way to, if you felt that you made a point that just didn't come across well, or you want to clarify or expand on a situation or an example, then that's a perfect way to do that.
So beyond not showing up, you've already mentioned as being a big no-no. Are there any other mistakes or missteps that you see job seekers making as you work with them?
I think in the interview process too, I think it's really important not to talk negatively about your previous employer. Like I think, obviously you're leaving for a reason, but you don't need to go into details. Like I think it's again, it's going back to that professionalism, you're leaving because of whatever. It wasn't the right situation for you, you weren't happy with where you thought you were going in the company, et cetera. That's fine. Stop there. You don't have to get into any personal conflicts or things like that. And that's something that people need to be aware of, because it does reflect on you at the end of the day, So I think it's really important to be as positive as you can be, and in situations with the recruiter and with the client.
And is there ever a chance for you to have your guard down a little bit more with the recruiter?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I usually say with me, like I want them to have a more frank conversation with me, but it doesn't have to get into the personal, like your conversation with the recruiter should be as open as it can be about what you want to do, what you're looking for, what the types of roles that would make sense for you, the types of people you might want to work with, that kind of stuff, right? So it's all about you and what you want, not necessarily the bad things that you experienced in your previous job that were personal in nature.
And so before I let you go, I'd love it if you can share any final pieces of advice or anything you want to reiterate, because it's just so important for those listening.
One of the things that I think is really important is just be yourself. Be yourself in the interviews. It's wherever you end up is like you're going to be spending a lot of time there. So when you're interviewing with the client, like you should let them know who you are and what you're going to show up like every day on the job. And also, take a look at them. Like, it's a two-way street, right? So you need to make sure that you're comfortable working in that environment, and ask the questions you need to ask to make sure that it's the right fit for you as well.
Perfect, because it should be a fit. And as you said, you spend a lot of your life working together. Often people are spending more time with their coworkers than their families. So you really want to get into a place that it's going to be good for everybody.
Absolutely.
And so what are you working on now, Sandra? And where can our listeners go to learn more about you and Sandstone Solutions?
So I'm working on a couple of opportunities right now, and I'm looking to expand my business into different areas. I'm trying to do some more work in the not-for-profit space, and also in the private equity world where I used to work. So those are two areas that I'm focusing on. And to learn more about me, I think, Tracy, you've got all my website and contact information. So
Absolutely.
If you could pass that on, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. We'll make sure all of that is in the show notes so that everybody can find Sandra with ease. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Sandra. I know that I'm taking away a lot of great insights. Really love the key success factors that you talked about. Love the fact that you shared the story from your background around just wishing that you had asked more questions about the investing, asked for more details, and really that you had spoken up. And so I think anybody who's listening, now is the time, if there's something you're not understanding financially, to really dig into that. Love it that you shared lots of tips of what to do and what not to do as we're working with recruiters, with search firms, certainly as we're looking for roles. But the key to be very professional, dress professional, be prepared. Be professional in all correspondence, use your manners. And as you said, Sandra, really use common sense, which I find is not that common anymore. And it is a very small world, no matter what the industry. And so certainly be ready, because the leaders of all industries are pretty much connected. And so they're going to be able to find out information no matter what. So use your manners. And if you're ever in doubt, go on the side of more dressed up, more prepared, more ready, so that you can be the candidate who wins the role. So thank you so much, Sandra.
Thanks very much, Tracy.
So there you have it, listeners. Sandra D'Souza, founder and managing director of Sandstone Solutions Group, the search firm based in Mississauga, Ontario. Until next time, take good care and stay financially fit.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. To all you millionaires in the making out there, if you love this podcast, please subscribe on iTunes to keep your financial fitness training going. Oh, and leave us a review. And be sure to visit 2 S's, 2 T's, financialfitness.com to take your free financial fitness assessment. Find out how financially fit you really are. See you next week, young millionaires to be.